Thanks for joining me and coming on, especially in this time, which is kind of unprecedented. But I wanted to start, and we'll obviously get into a lot of things going on right now. But I wanted to start. You're a New York kid, and I'm based here in New York, and we tape out of New York, and it's been kind of surreal. But you grew up. Tell us, you grew up in the restaurant business.
I did. I'm born and raised in New York, and I grew up in the hospitality industry. Growing up my whole life, my parents had restaurants, and even before that, my family was in the hotel business. And so, from an early age, I understood what it meant to run a business and the blood, sweat, and tears that it required, and just watched my parents live that life and build a family while doing it. So, I have a lot of love for New York, and my heart is there, and I can't wait to get back there.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It's crazy just, how much has changed here in the past couple months and, especially with restaurants. And I will tell you, I live right across the street from your location here on 75th and Amsterdam. And, I've seen a lot of the delivery people lining up to take out, but, I miss walking by and seeing a packed Sweetgreen and lines always out the door. How, with restaurants and what's happened now, what's the vision? What's the plan, once we get through this to come back?
I think it's really sad to see the decimation that's happened in the restaurant industry. And some of my favorite restaurants and chefs and just places I used to eat um, might be forever changed. And it's been great to see some restaurants quickly evolve and pivot their business model and start serving meal kits or pantry or grocery. And so I really admire the resilience and the fast evolution that's required any time like this. So I think some people have been able to do that and go into survival mode. But it is scary to think about the landscape and what it's going to look like at the end of this, and when we slowly come out of this, and even what that looks like. And for those that do make it, the experience will be different. Customers are going to be different. There's no going back to normal. That normal is going to look like something else. But ultimately, that just requires evolution and adaptation, and so uh, I do think there will be opportunity for certain restaurants to just reinvent themselves and create something new at the end of this.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, especially as we talk about restaurants and, seeing the effects on these restaurants here, it's really been devastating. And, for you and for Sweetgreen and moving forward, have you guys started to really look ahead 6 months, 12 months, and really start to kind of figure out what you believe it's going to look like coming out of this?
It's hard to know exactly what it's going to look like, but we have spent a lot of time scenario planning and trying to build the business we want to build, and maybe bring that reality in a little closer. For years, we've been investing in our digital relationship with the customer and building our app and that digital model. And so this crisis has just pushed us to move to a digital only model. So if anything, it's pushed our business to be more digital. And so obviously it's also forced us to rethink every other part of our business, from our offering and our menu to the actual experience in our physical restaurants, to how we operate, to our supply chain, to our team member experience. And so we're definitely looking 6 and 12 months ahead and really thinking about how we can start to build back and come out of this even stronger. But ultimately, we're also just trying to think about the next couple months and just understand what type of experience we need to build for the
Yeah.
customer and the team member.
And I want to go and go through the story, but before I do that, I want you to speak about what I was super impressed with what I've seen from you guys and read about is you guys didn't really just off the bat, you weren't, it seems like right when this happened, you weren't thinking, how are we going to survive? You guys really got involved with helping people on the front lines and just amazing. I've seen it up close here in New York, but can you just talk about that decision to like, you have a major billion-dollar business, and you guys have to figure out how to make it work and survive now. But you guys really turned your attention to doing a lot with folks on the front line, with Jose Andres and some others. Can you just talk about what that decision was like, and to do that? And was there any hesitation?
Again, going back to when this all started a couple months ago, we didn't know how long this would last. We didn't know what this would look like, but what we did know is that there would be folks on the front lines, really putting their lives out there and to help those that are affected. And so we quickly realized part of our business needed to shift to support them. And so our whole business model completely changed overnight. And we had a business model that had many channels, and one of those which was a channel called Outpost, which delivered meals to offices and shelves that we would set up in different locations like office buildings or residential buildings, or and would do group delivery. And so we had a whole sales team, a logistics team, and ultimately we have this greater engine of kitchens and restaurants all over the country, farmers, a supply chain network that we've built. And so when our business starts to drop overnight, part of our intention was to keep that engine going, and also to be able to serve as many of those folks on the front lines as we could. And so pretty early on in the crisis, we pivoted a large part of our team to just serving medical staff and hospital staff. And we got it up and running within 48 hours. Actually,
Wow.
we put out a message out to on our social channel saying, we want to feed hospital workers and medical staff for free. Let us know where you are. And we got 11,000 requests from hospitals and medical staff groups overnight. And so little by little, we started serving them and pivoting our volume and capacity to serve them. And now in the last, since that started, we've served over 250,000 meals for free.
250,000.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, that's got to make you feel good. And just with what you guys have done, and what I've always noticed just about your brand ethos and just how you guys always operated, that to me would kind of be typical of Sweetgreen. Starting out your business though, and going back, can you tell us the story of how it came about? Because you were in college, right?
Yes, we were students at Georgetown University. It's where I met Jonathan and Nathaniel, my two co-founders and partners. And we all met there as students. And John was actually the first person I met my freshman year. He was in the dorm room right next door to me. And we quickly became friends and really bonded over food. And, we were both very passionate about food. And, we had a friendship over the years, and same with Nate. And John and Nate actually met in their first class freshman year in accounting class. So we all kind of met in the beginning freshman year and stayed friends. And towards the end of our career in senior year at Georgetown, we saw everyone going and applying for these banking jobs or investment
Sure.
banking, consulting, and it just didn't feel right for us. We all grew up with parents that were entrepreneurs and immigrants, and we saw them build businesses and work for themselves, and we wanted to do the same. So as we looked around, we also had this constant kind of problem every day in our lives around what we were eating and the options we had. The dining room and cafeteria on campus wasn't optimal, and there were some great restaurants in Georgetown, but none that made you feel really good after you ate, or none that had some sort of transparency or clean food, or there was never we looked around and there wasn't any food that was healthy, with an experience that you wanted to be part of and that was accessible.
Yeah.
So we said we should create this. We should create a place where you can get that kind of food, but also make an experience that people wanted to opt into.
Now, about the restaurant business from growing up in it, and I always have so much admiration. I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of different businesses, but the ones I find that I have the most admiration for really are restaurateurs. It's just such a difficult business. I mean, you are constantly on. It really is a 24/7 business. You knew this, but yet you still wanted to do something in food.
I grew up in the food industry, but my parents ran a very different type of restaurant. It was
Fine dining.
fine dining to the max. And And to your point, that is is a very specific life. It's, there wasn't one guest that came into the restaurant that my parents didn't greet themselves. They
Yeah.
were there 24/7, and they ran it that way in a very special way. And so as much as I had experience in that part of the hospitality community, what we were building was something a little different. So, I definitely learned a lot from my parents and saw how they led with a sense of hospitality and food quality and all those things. But the model and the business model we were building was different. So I didn't really know much about that end of the spectrum in terms of food. And so the three of us really, went in with not much knowledge, but we went in with a problem we were trying to solve for our own lives and the community around us. And we went in, with a vision to change, people's access to food.
I love that. How so you guys come up with this, you've lamenting about the food and service and just what you're able to get, and you come up with this idea to do this. And a lot of people sit around, they come up with ideas, but then how did you actually just take those first steps into making this into a real business?
So the first step was writing a business plan. So the three of us had taken a class at Georgetown called entrepreneurship with
Very
Professor
cool.
Will Finnerty. And he was an adjunct professor who taught just that one class. And it was the only course really the only entrepreneurship course at the time. And so in that class, they teach you how to write a business plan and how to reach out to other entrepreneurs and how to think about building a business model. And so after we'd all taken the class separately, we decided to write this business plan and put it on paper. And around the corner from where we lived, our senior year was this little, green and white 560 square foot shack that had sat empty for a few years. So we said, you know what, let's rent that out and let's build it there. And we went and met with the landlord. She actually, an amazing woman named Marcy Simon, wouldn't take our calls for 30 days. My co-founder John called her every day for 30 days. She finally responded and said, "I'll take a meeting if you stop calling me."
That's great.
Yeah. And so we finally met her, and she looked at the business plan and said, come back with a real business plan. I think at the time it was a couple pages. She said, come back with a real business plan, go meet this architect, and then we can talk.
Wow.
We did that. We came back, and I guess she saw something in us or believed in the vision, and, had not much to lose. No one else was going to rent this 560 square foot
Right, exactly.
concrete box. So she agreed to lease us the space.
That's great. So you finally get the space. There's a lot of costs involved. I mean, startup cost, and then, you know, actually, taking it from getting the space to the next steps. How did you do that? Did you divide responsibilities? Did you focus on one thing or another?
In the beginning, it was kind of all of us doing everything. We would definitely divide and conquer, but in the beginning of starting a business, you all have to be involved in every part of it.
Yeah.
And it was all new to us. It was very exciting, whether it was from hiring the contractor to designing the restaurant to figuring out the menu. We definitely all had our areas that we were in control of, but we were, all in on all of it. And back to the point before about the three of us didn't really know anything about building a restaurant
Right.
or running a fast casual restaurant. So um, the fact that we didn't know we were getting into really helped us, because if we had known all the challenges, we would have made some very different decisions. We would have built it very differently. And I'm not sure that would have been a better thing.
Right. It's amazing.
We thought it would cost us 150 grand and we could open it pretty quickly. It ended up costing us double
Of
that
course.
amount and double.
It's so hard. It's but what you just said there is really so true. And I hear a lot of entrepreneurs talk about it. If we knew something else, or if we had that experience, it would have been completely different. It might not even have succeeded. And it sounds like you had that same situation, and fortunately you didn't. So you guys just kept going at it from, what you wanted to do. And what was that? What was your vision initially? What was that what we all know now as Sweetgreen? What was that? Was that vision there at the very beginning?
In a broader sense, it definitely was. And I look back at some of the decisions we made in that early, even the first restaurant. And, so much of our menu and experience and product has evolved to something completely different today. But the vision and the purpose and the problem we're trying to solve are all the same.
Yeah.
And I look back at that first restaurant, the fact that we picked that location, a site we wouldn't even drive by today. It was 560 square feet with no utilities, no running water, no electricity. We would never try to build that today. We would never take a site that small. The fact that we opened with a certain menu, sourcing from the places we were sourcing. We opened with no soda. We opened with compostable packaging. We opened with kind of going against a lot of the rules that you saw in every fast casual model. So the fact that we didn't have the playbook or didn't know, like, oh, it's really important to serve soda because it's, a huge chunk of your profit margin
Yeah.
comes from there. And we knew that soda was very profitable, but ultimately we were trying to build a very different business model. And so, but we didn't really have, we weren't risk. There was nothing else at stake. It's if we were a restaurant that had been in business and soda was part of your menu, it's a lot easier to start without it than to remove that from your P&L or move it from your profit center. So starting from scratch with that vision and those ideals and lack of experience, I think really helped us in the beginning.
Yeah, no, it's amazing that sometimes, that, being naive about something and jumping into it and can really help you. So you guys do that. You jump into this. You had just graduated. Is that
We
right?
were
Or
we were still seniors at the time, so
so you're
it was
still
our senior
seniors?
year, running between classes, sharing this business plan with everyone. We had made T-shirts that said Sweetgreen. It was like the first thing we did,
Very cool.
and we ended up raising $300,000 from about 50 or 60 different people, friends and professors, and anyone anyone that would listen to us.
I love it. Those people are probably really happy today that they've made that investment, I am sure. So you raise $300,000, you get the business going, you guys are all in, and I have to imagine you faced some major challenges. What were some of those initial major challenges? Were there any that actually, you thought may have ended the business prematurely?
In the early days, as we were building Sweetgreen, we definitely had a lot of challenges along the way, whether it was, our needing to spend double to build it out than we thought, delays. But ultimately, we were so confident in what we were building because, again, we were building it for ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes we look back and say, you know what, we almost had more confidence in that location than any other location
So-
because we were the customer. We
yeah.
were building this for ourselves, for our community, for our friends. We knew that Georgetown needed it. What we quickly started to realize was that, this was a bigger problem outside of Georgetown. This is something that DC needed, that, the rest of the country needed, and food needed to evolve. But early on, we had challenges every single day, and it's how we learned.
Yeah, and so take me through that. You launched this restaurant. There's a big change from having one place, let's say, to then having multiple locations. When was it? What was the timing of you guys saying, "Hey, you know what? This is working out." Was there a time, and is that why you started and looked to build other locations?
In the beginning, when we first wrote the business plan, the intent was always to open more. And I think early on we defined that idea of scale as, oh, maybe we could get to 10 of these in DC. And over time, as Sweetgreen came to life and we saw the value it created for our customers and guests, and how people were connecting with it, we said, this can be much bigger. And so how we defined scale has constantly changed over the last 13 years. But within that first year, there were, moments where we thought the business wouldn't make it to even our 1 year anniversary. And there were moments where we thought this could be huge.
Yeah.
And we always went back and forth between those moments. The first winter for us, opening a 560 square foot salad and frozen yogurt shop in the dead of winter with no seats,
Yeah.
uh, we learned wasn't a very good idea, in the winter at least, and it forced us to evolve the future model to make sure that we were more resilient for seasonality. But that first winter was really tough. There were moments where we almost ran out of money and we almost didn't make it, but it forced us to really do two things: to really understand how to run the business in a really lean way and just think about our whole cost structure, but B, most importantly, just think about how to evolve the business model. So even in, that was we opened in August. In month 4, we were already planning this evolution. So even though the business was a newborn, we were already evolving everything from the menu to the format to, what the next location needed to look like. And so from day one, we've been big believers in constant evolution.
Do you think that's one of the reasons that you guys have been so successful, is being able to evolve and being able to change once you learn something?
I think so. As I look back at the 13 years, I think our ability to evolve and adapt, that sense of adaptability, was ingrained in us. And because we started without much experience or knowledge, we were constantly, trying to learn and be curious about what was working, what wasn't. And so it forced us to really lean into that change and that adaptability. And then secondly, I think most importantly is, from the beginning, we always tried to have a very close connection to the customer, to really listen to them and understand them. And that built a really strong sense of community around the brand. But we realized early on, especially in the first 5 years, that the food landscape was obviously changing, but that the customer was changing, their needs were changing, and that for us to successfully grow and meet the needs of the customer, we have to really understand them. And so even as I think about some of our earliest investments in technology and thinking about how to remove friction from the whole food experience and create a more convenient way to get your food, that was all just us listening and trying to understand the customer.
Yeah, I mean, you guys have done an incredible job at that, and just from the process and walking into a Sweetgreen and how smooth it is from start to finish. And you know, going back a few months and looking at a Sweetgreen, and I worked down last year, down on Broadway here in Manhattan, or in the 30s. You have a location there. There were lines last summer completely out the door, people waiting on those lines. It's amazing to me. And then I'd be like, who's going to do that? And then I would just go jump on the line because it was just so good. The food was so good. It was so fresh. But did you have that? Did that happen, those types of lines at your initial restaurant? Did you realize, was there that major demand for you before you went on and started to create other locations?
In the beginning in DC, there was. I think the brand really started to take off, and we saw customers really get connect with this idea of having access to this kind of food that was fresh and transparent and clean and made you feel really good after you ate it. But also importantly, was connected to this broader brand experience, that people felt good. We looked around in the beginning, and aside from it being hard to find healthy food that made you feel good, none of that food was generally like that craveable or was attached to a cool brand.
Right.
And so much of it for us was, to simply put it, we thought that healthy food had kind of a branding problem. And we wanted to create an experience around food that was good for you, that made it the option people wanted to be part of that experience, regardless of, it being healthy or not.
Would
Um, yeah.
and would you say that? I mean, you brought up something extremely interesting, especially myself being always in the experience business. I always looked at, you go to Starbucks and you buy a cup of coffee, and coffee beans as a commodity are a couple cents, but you go in there and you pay $5 for a cup of coffee because you're really buying an experience. And do you feel, as Sweetgreen, it's like you just said, it's very similar. You're buying an experience, as opposed, I mean, you're buying great healthy food, that's part of it, but do you think what's helped you be so successful is really that experience that you're selling, that people want to be part of now within their lifestyles?
I do. And I think even before that, it all starts with the food and the supply chain. From an early point, we really were clear to try to build a different supply chain and connect with, many of the farmers that you find in your favorite fine dining or sit down restaurants. And we wanted to bring those ingredients and that food into a more accessible environment. And so I think early on, we had a lot of trust from our customers around the type of food and ingredients we were starting with. And I think ultimately that's the most important thing. We can have a great design, a great experience, a great app, but ultimately, if customers don't trust the food or don't feel good about where it's coming from or how it tastes, and ultimately the product is what gets people to come back. So
Yeah, I mean, I love walking in and seeing the board and seeing where everything was sourced from. And that to me is that moment where I'm like, you know what? I'm eating in a really good place if they're sourcing from these local farmers, and not just one or two. It's everything, it seems like, is specific to each product.
and that board's been a really important part of how we share our transparency and about our food. And I remember very vividly, the first time we put that board up was in our third or fourth restaurant, I think in Logan Circle in DC. and it was 2009, and we put it up, and or 2010, and customers, a lot of people were like, why are you putting that up? People don't care about that in fast food. No one needs to know where the stuff comes from. So people thought we were crazy. And now you look around and it's pretty standard for most any place to share where their food comes from. So it's been exciting to see that customers just wanting more of that information. But ultimately for us, it's just been about this commitment to transparency. So it's not only, if you look at that, our source board, it doesn't just share all of the really cool, exciting local farmers that we're working with, and that are sourcing the peaches that are at peak season, and all these really exciting ingredients that we celebrate. It's kind of everything. It's really celebrating that our rice comes from this amazing organic farm in California, that our olive oil comes from California. Really celebrating all the sources of pretty much all the ingredients. So it's not just about the highlighted ingredients. It's making sure that we feel that we're sharing all of the transparency around our full supply chain.
Yeah, I think that's been a big part of that transparency has been a big reason why people have really related to your brand. I know one of the things you guys got involved very early on as well that I think was super different was you guys got involved in really creating different experiences like your music festival. And how did I could tell you're a huge music guy because behind you, you got the music posters there. I see it. But was that from you? Was that your idea, or how did that come about?
It was something that came about pretty organically when we opened our second Sweetgreen. So we opened the first Sweetgreen in Georgetown, very small. Learned a lot of lessons that we needed to evolve. Took all those lessons and built them into our second location. It was much bigger. It had seats. The menu was a little broader. It was located at the biggest farmers market in DC, right on DuPont Circle. And we thought it was going to crush it from day one. And we opened our doors and crickets, almost no customers. And we realized that we were kind of on the wrong side of the street. We were on a very big street, Connecticut Avenue, but all the business was on the other side of the street. We were the first business to open on this other side. And so, it hit us like we have to figure out how to connect with customers and figure out this idea of, marketing. How do we think
Yeah.
about community marketing and just connecting with the customers that were there? And so my co-founder Nate is very, very deeply into music, and we thought like, what if we just started like creating some energy around our side of the street? Let's go buy a speaker. Nate went to Guitar Center, bought a speaker. We put it outside the restaurant, and we just started blasting music. Nate would DJ. We were sampling food, and we were just trying to get some energy and get people to know that we were there, and then come meet us and introduce ourselves and learn about Sweetgreen. And it sounds silly, but we did it every weekend, and it started to work. Business picked up. Customers knew we were there, and they started to connect with us and learn about Sweetgreen. And that led into us then doing a block party in the parking lot behind the restaurant with 800 people.
That is great.
Convinced Hot Chip to come DJ, and that turned into the year after that we said, let's really expand this and make it a real festival and create this experience that connects food and music and gets people really excited about that connection. And so we did it at Merriweather Post Pavilion and somehow convinced the Strokes to come play. And we went from 800 people in a parking lot to 13,000 people sold out at Merriweather. And again, the whole time taking over concessions and replacing it with, all of our farmers and our food and other restaurateurs and chefs that were creating similar food with all these amazing ingredients. And so you could be at this music festival listening to the Strokes or Phoenix or Kendrick Lamar and, eating like local oysters or like an amazing like kale salad or a quinoa bowl, and just understanding that you could have this amazing intersection of food and music at a really enjoyable experience.
No, I think that's such a genius, idea. And when you think about it, and just, myself being in the experiential business and building experience like that, food and music together are a really strong combination. And it seems like that's really worked for you guys. How with the festival now, where is it? How are you guys going about that? In these times, have you added other types of experiences as well to the Sweetgreen brand?
So for years we did the bigger festival in DC, I believe for 6 years. And then we started kind of, at that point, the Sweetgreen had grown. We're now in 10 cities and states, and we wanted to start to bring some of that experience into a more localized community. And so we started doing smaller music events. We did one in DC, we did one in California. And so the events for us have become more localized and more community based. Maybe one day in the future we'll bring back the big festival, but for now we're really focused on these kind of, connecting to each community individually. And again, we do that in lots of ways, not just with events and experience, but really thinking about whether it's some of these chef collaborations that allow us to tell stories around our supply chain and food, or other great partnerships. It's, as we scale, we really are focused on still maintaining that sense of community in a really localized way.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what I think of you guys as very community specific and centric, and going back to that board and learning where, when I look at it in New York, it's a lot of stuff coming from upstate New York or New Jersey. You really feel, you get that feel that this is a community driven business, even though you guys are national and growing, exponentially right now, but you've been able to really maintain that, it seems like. Um,
Yeah, and the for us, as we think about this commitment to transparency, it's not a commitment to perfection or a commitment to having all the answers, because we're certainly not going to have all the answers and we're not going to get everything right. But we're super thoughtful about how we make all of our decisions, especially around the supply chain. And every year we look at those decisions and say, how can we make them better? So it's not about that board, and all of our transparency efforts are just around sharing the information with customers, but bringing them on that journey. Every year we try to make Sweetgreen better, invest more in our ingredients, and think about how we can support that supply chain in a deeper way. And so again, for us, it's not about saying we have all the answers.
yeah.
We're really confident and excited and proud of the supply chain we've built, and we work with some of the greatest farmers and producers and growers in the country. And it's something I wake up every day so proud of. But next year the commitment is to make it better than it was this year.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that. It sounds like you guys have always been able to repurpose and redrive and grow and get better. And I think for any entrepreneur, I mean, everyone faces challenges, many challenges. The only way you grow from that or get better is if you take them on and you make changes. And it sounds like you guys have really been able to do that. One of the big challenges right now, which I'd love in the time we have left just to get back to, is, we're going through this crisis right now. And as I told you, you're the first interview I've done in 2 months, with a lot of people I spoke to. And a lot of those conversations were, a lot of it's irrelevant now in certain ways, and things have changed. For you going forward right now and focusing on what's going to be with Sweetgreen, where is your focus right now, aside from obviously everything you've done on the front lines and jumping into that, but where is your focus right now, in terms of getting Sweetgreen through this and not only surviving but thriving?
Our focus is on many things.
Yeah,
I would say, first and foremost, our focus is really on really thinking about the new experience, and in our restaurants and on our app, but really thinking about the updated health and safety guidelines, and how they're built into a whole new experience for our customers and team members. That's probably most important and top of mind when we do start to reopen our front lines and bring our restaurants back, to a closer sense of normal. What does that look like? How do we keep our team members safe, and how do we keep our customers safe and make sure that everyone feels good about reconnecting in our physical spaces? So that's been a huge point of focus. I think beyond that, we look at the future vision for Sweetgreen, and some of these parts of our business that we were going to work on or develop that were maybe 2 years away, 3 years away, and we kind of look at them and say, why not start working on them now? So, rethinking so many parts of our strategy. And again, I feel very fortunate that the reality we were building towards is just here a lot quicker. This idea of, we always believed Sweetgreen would be, our vision for Sweetgreen was to be a more digital platform with a broader menu. And this crisis has just forced us into that reality a lot quicker. Again, there's been a painful journey to that,
yeah,
and we've learned a lot, but it's allowing us to really think about how we can evolve and adapt quicker than we thought we could. And so many of the constraints that were around our business, to your point, the lions that were around the door, as much as it sounds like a good thing for us, we see that as
sure.
friction, and a lot of customers don't want to deal with that. And so, and it really having that volume and a line out the door, it creates some constraints where we can't work on certain things because we're trying to make sure that we can execute that model right and make sure to serve those customers. But, you know, our business is completely different today. So some of those constraints that were present 90 days ago aren't there today. So how do we just rethink what we're trying to build and maybe build it faster? And so even, looking at our menu, we launched a whole new category of food, these hot dinner plates that we had been thinking about and slowly testing and thought we would roll out in 2021 at some point. And when this crisis hit, we looked around and listened to our customer and saw that people were at home eating more comforting foods and cooking more. And at some point, we believed that people would not want to continue to cook all their meals. So
Definitely me.
yeah, we wanted to, continue listening and serving our customer. So we said, let's roll this out in 30 days. Something like that for a company our size, it usually takes 9 to 12 months of proper testing and, building the training materials and building the supply chain and all the different components. And the whole company came together and we said, if we all work on this together and drive towards this, let's do it in 30 days. And we launched it in 30 days, and it's had a great impact on the business. It's, the response from our customers have been great. Was it 100% perfect? No. Are we going to continue to evolve and iterate it? Yes.
Yeah, I love your idea for plates. I when I first heard of that, just knowing, and now trusting Sweetgreen so much, because I do like to eat healthy, and especially, one of the most amazing things I've seen is the only healthy thing my 12-year-old daughter wants to get or wants to eat is Sweetgreen, and she asks for it weekly,
I love that.
which is so amazing because the junk she eats and the junk she consumes, but it's so funny how that's how good it tastes. So you guys having this plates now, I just think is a great idea. With that, and coming up with plates and saying, you're pushing. I've seen a lot of businesses. I hope there's going to be a lot of better things coming out of this epidemic, with businesses pushing ahead really quickly on projects. And it sounds like you did that with plates. Have you done it with other things that you said were kind of in the works and you were hesitating on, but other stuff for the business that you've kind of pushed forward and we'll see in the near future?
In times of crisis, there's a ton of tragedy, and have to acknowledge it. It's really going to be scary to see, how many people and families and businesses come out of this, and
Yeah.
hopefully come out safely on the other side. But in times of crisis, there's also a ton of innovation, and people are inventing things and creating new solutions and moving fast because the world is demanding it. And so I think it's exciting to see, a lot of the innovation that's going to come out of this. We are definitely looking at all these ideas we had and things we wanted to build in the future, and starting to think about them now. So, whether it's part of our digital experience or more menu changes or thinking about physical formats, I would say Sweetgreen is going to continue to evolve, if not evolve way faster than it would have normally.
Yeah, no, and we all hope to see that as well. We can't wait to get back to normal. I can't wait to get back and actually wait on a Sweetgreen line. So I know you guys are working on that, but it's such an incredible brand story. Nothing better than it's a kid from New York that's doing it. We could all, just wrapping up. I mean, we could all use some of your magic here. Some of these restaurants that I see that are suffering. I walk down the street. You're someone who understands this, having grown up in the business. You know, I guess in closing, how do you see this coming out? Not so much for let's say the Sweetgreens, but for some of these individually owned businesses that, they're going to bring back and try and, do a 25-50% capacity. For me, I just don't see how that could work. But any thoughts on how you envision or what you believe might happen?
It's hard to really predict what's going to happen, but I would say, sadly, it pains me to say that I feel like some businesses are, clearly going to not make it out of this and won't survive. I do think it will be different by city, by neighborhood, by region. I think we're starting to see that around the country, different communities and cities are either reopening faster or responding differently. So And again, it'll depend on, some businesses have the ability and the resources to evolve quickly and pivot their business model um, more than others. So
Yeah.
it's really hard. I don't think there's going to be kind of like a blanket outcome. I think it's really going to be specific to different parts of the industry and different regions. But I remain hopeful. And then, we've, the one thing I'll say is that in this time, the sense of community has been stronger than ever in the restaurant and food landscape, whether it's distributors, farmers, restaurateurs. I mean, on a weekly basis, I talk to at least, 10 to 15 other entrepreneurs in food or
Yeah.
restaurateurs or chefs, and everyone is sharing ideas and thoughts and helping each other. And even a lot of these restaurants that are struggling for survival are still waking up every day and creating meals to feed those on the front lines. So I think it's been really inspiring to see how the whole industry has come together and reacted. And I really, I hope we see, as many people as possible make it through the end of this.
Yeah, and I bet good things will come out of that. And this, especially like you said, how I've seen people react to it. We had Danny Meyer on this program or before, and seen what he's doing, and some of these other folks. And it just seems like you said, there's this kind of brotherhood or community that you guys are all really pitching in and helping others, which maybe brings out a really good thing down the road for everyone in your business.
Yeah, agreed.
So, listen, we appreciate coming on, especially in quarantine. And thank you for being my first interview, virtual, not in a studio. I think it all worked out well, I hope. But, Nicholas, awesome to see you. And thank you, most importantly, for what you're doing for everyone on the front lines right now.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
You got it.